Hey, this is Aaron Murakami, and this is Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. And this morning I have Eric Dollard on the call. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So it's been a little while since we've done some updates, and after the conference, right after the last video we did, we managed to have Steve Hills up here, who's the director of EPD Labs, and he took a bunch of Glom down with him from Mark McKay's and some other stuff, and we found that radar indicator, which we'll have to get down to the lab at some point. And so, but since then, you've been kind of out in the woods, out in Oregon, camping out and just kind of writing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, the presentation kind of really left me wiped out.
Uh-huh.
And then, so I came back here, and then I continued on the symmetrical components inverser algebra project, and then the noise and the pollution and everything else, I just had to bail for the forest and drop the whole thing. And then when I was there, then I started getting back on to this book that needs to be put together for the last presentation, which is going to be an absolutely monumental effort. It's going to take about 2,000 pages of writing.
Right. Well, your presentation was 4 hours, and you didn't even get to cover everything that you wanted.
No, it was just kind of what I did is I just gave the highlights of all the different subjects, mostly pictorial, just so, the viewer was, the audience, was aware of the subjects, but each subject could be a book in itself.
Right.
So there's been kind of been a demand for me, because over the decades I've produced so many diagrams and equations and theories and stuff without really a lot of explanation. There's kind of a need for me, particularly with the stuff in the RCA book, is to get into some rather detailed explanations of what's going on.
Right. And so for anybody listening, the RCA book, this is all part of a package called Wireless Giant of the Pacific, which is at wirelessgiantofthepacific.com. But you can find links to all this on ericpdollard.com, and if you go there and click on any of the book or video packages, then that earns 70% for Eric and EPD Labs to help support their work. Now, so the presentation at the recent conference, Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson, that's what you're referring to as, with the most recent presentation. And that was a 4-hour presentation, and there's a link to that on ericpdollard.com. And if you're listening to this and if you haven't seen that presentation yet, definitely go to ericpdollard.com and click on the graphic or the link to the Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson. It's a 4-hour presentation. It includes the PowerPoint, and as a bonus thrown in there, there's a copy of a video, kind of a guided tour by Eric, walking you through the Landers facility that was up and running. So that, what would you say that was the first time anybody has ever publicly seen anything about Landers?
Yeah, well, that video really wasn't made, for general release. But what the video shows is was the power company engineers had showed up because of the interference between their system and my system and the complications and the fact that they were also interested in what it was I was working on. The place was kind of a Disneyland for any kind of power company engineer because of just acres and acres of poles and wires and insulators and all that type of stuff they're into. So it was a Disneyland adventure for them. And my friend Chris from Bolinas, who about once every 3 months came down to help me keep the place cleaned up and do stuff, decided to video it because he was making his own personal documentary. Because this is all considered, this part of the old Bolinas RCA project.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, all my friends in Bolinas, they were children at the time, which I was involved at RCA, but I allowed them in, and they got to tune transmitters and do things like that. So we had kind of a long-going relationship until eventually everything in Bolinas was scattered and destroyed, and pretty much no hope of ever recovering any of the RCA effort, which is unfortunate. So right now, everything is redirected towards a Bell telephone approach. which there seems to be more survivors of Bell Telephone and more interest, particularly on a governmental level.
Right. So there's a lot of hundreds and hundreds of photos that we put up right before the conference at the end of June on I think there's a category called Long Lines Project, and there's a whole.
Yeah, that's basically what we're working on now. Is taking they no longer utilize carrier telephone lines and cable TV lines that the phone company and the cable companies had installed, and converting them into Alexanderson and Beveridge antennas and analog computers for analyzing these complicated waves that I started to discuss in the last presentation.
Uh-huh.
With the aim of communicating electrically into and out of the interior of the Earth.
Right. So, and this is all under the Advanced Seismic Warning project, which is using this to hear the Earth sounds, and you're collecting a bunch of different data from different sources, putting them together, and you can kind of see a picture of when an earthquake is coming. And this is what one of the successful Indiegogo campaigns helped raise about $26,000 for, and so you and Justin had been working on that project. And
yeah, that basically allowed us to get really critical parts, and then some of the rent's got to be paid in this building here while we're working on it and all that. But to be realistic about the whole thing, because we're trying to go for a major grant now to move this forward, try to get it done faster and make it more established.
And that would definitely take it to the...
Well, then it would be an established facility. There would be stereo antennas.
Uh-huh.
They'd be solidly constructed. Everything would be done right. It's basically the estimate for an engineering estimate for projects like this is $3,000 per utility pole, and right now we have about 70 of them.
Uh-huh.
Of course, most of them are already standing and don't need to be replaced, so that lowers the cost per pole. But the big expense is going to be drilling the grounding holes. They have to be 30 feet into the ground. Those are about $6,000 each for the drilling company. We need 16 miles of 10-gauge hard-drawn copper wire for each antenna. That's worth a fortune. We have 4 employees that have to be consistent for a period of 5 years. That's the projected project length. The big earthquake will happen by then, if not tomorrow. And it's just the cost is just, it's astronomical to do anything.
Right.
I mean, basically, just in this building to make it a place to work on my car, and I have a very basic test bench, and not a lot I can do here. I think is already reaching the $80,000-$90,000 level.
Uh-huh.
And I still don't have the electrical system put in, or I'm still stuck with only 110.
Right.
So I'm grateful, when people provide, multiple thousands of dollars, but basically, I'm still stuck with doing things the old way, like I used to on food stamps, and everybody works for free, and an RCA and the phone company used to provide the Glom and the places to do things, but I'm not 19 years old anymore. I'm 62, and RCA and the phone company don't exist.
Right. So with, several months back, and we posted, a bunch of pictures on ericpdollar.com on, basically phase 1 of the project where you guys repaired a lot of the poles and were able to salvage some wire and stuff out in the desert. And so coming up here pretty soon, Eric's going to be working, Justin's going to be working with you on phase 2, which is basically...
basically, the way it's set up is phase 1 was to meet our basic government obligations, which was to secure all broken wires and dangling broken poles and clean up the mess and all that, put the proper, serial numbers and what have you on everything so that it's identified as the government project and all that kind of stuff. So that's basically, there's nothing that's going to fly apart or hurt anybody or
right.
whatever. So we got that out of the way. It was brutal. is we had to dig the holes in the rock by hand. And that's all in the video. So the second wave is now we have these two lines of utility poles, some with the right wires on them, some not with the right wires on them, and about 10 of them missing that need to be replaced. So now phase 2 is we have to go out and glom all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So we have to, there's a couple of lines that are all smashed up out in places in the desert, so we notify the phone company that we're removing those things, or the Bureau of Land Management, and then we go in, pull that out. So we have to gather up about maybe 8 miles of wire or more, and 40 cross arms, with the associated insulators and pins and all that type of stuff, and then we're negotiating for a supply of utility poles here. So we need 10 to start with. We need 5 just to replace the missing poles that we had to take down that was shown in the video that were all rotten. We got to put in 3 more dead end poles. So that's 8 more poles there. The poles are $500 each normally, but we located a source here. This municipality and the government here is very cooperative and helpful with all this stuff. So it looks like we'll get the poles locally. We have to go out and harvest the cross arms and wire, and that'll take the bulk of the season. And then the third phase, which will be in the spring when it's not too cold. It's either too cold or too hot. That's the problem. So when it's not too cold, in April and May, we'll start up, and then we'll start to put the on this antenna here, the northwestern one, we'll start to put the cross arms up and get the cross arms in place and the guys and the missing poles, and get enough of the section put together that when we do phase 4 in the autumn, we'll put the wires up and put the terminal equipment on, and then start to see, to what level we can receive with the limiting grounding system we're going to have and the complications with power line interference.
Right. Okay. And we'll definitely be, putting whatever kind of documentation on the progress there. I'm sure you guys will be
everything will be photographed while we're working on it. So even though this next phase is not going to be particularly interesting, it's basically just going to be, taking stuff down off of poles and pulling poles out of the ground.
Right. So, okay. Now on when we did the Indiegogo campaign, if you're listening to this and if you had donated a certain amount of money to the Advanced Seismic Warning System campaign, some of you were to get an autograph photo by Eric, and that would have been mailed to you. Probably about 95% of them got mailed out already, a couple months ago, right around conference time, right after the conference. And there's a few of you who have not received those yet, and if you were eligible for one of those but did not receive it, send an email to info@epdlabs.org with your name and mailing address. The reason, if you were eligible and did not receive it, that's because we couldn't verify your address or you did not respond to an email that was sent to you. So I just want to let you know that. Now, talking about the books a little bit, like last year at the conference in 2013, your talk was the 4-quadrant representation of electricity, which was a video. We recorded your your presentation, and then you put a book together, a very extensive book by the same title, which is kind of an orientation for people to kind of orient them towards all the Versor algebra.
Right.
And so that's been available on 4quadranttheory.com. But if you want to get a copy of that and you don't have one, definitely get it through ericpdollard.com. And so this last conference, or actually unrelated to the last talk, would be the book Versor Algebra as Applied to Polyphase Power Systems. And this is a book that you had worked out, which is, very extensive. It's got, hundreds and hundreds of equations in that. And it's getting into the final phases of being put into its final form where people can purchase a copy of that. And if you kind of want to see what this is about, Eric's notes for that book are basically scanned in and are available for free at ericpdollar.com. There's a category in the blog called Verse or Algebra, and if you click on that, the beginnings of that book are being posted in there. Let's see, today is Tuesday, so we're going to be putting the next section in there. So about once a week, we're going to be putting some extra scans in there sequentially for that entire first book. But even if you get that, we encourage you to still purchase the final copy when that's available. And so that Verse or Algebra book, you're going to just kind of touch on a few of the points on what this math theory book is about. And
well, it lays the theoretical base for what's called the method of symmetrical components for analyzing polyphase power systems, which has never been done in any of the books that are written on the subject. They kind of get into a little high school dissertation on exponents and logarithms and imaginary numbers, and then all of a sudden they leap into the full-blown application of the method, and it makes it very difficult to understand what's going on. And the symbolisms used were very crude, very complicated, and difficult to understand, so I worked up a new method of symbolism where the inner workings of all of these rotating electric waves becomes very clear mathematically.
Right.
And then I extend it to a wide range of coordinate systems, which basically leads back to the Pythagorean and his era concept of the number, which was a critical part of the four-quadrant presentation in book.
Mm-hmm. And so this book is going to be, everybody will be able to see the scans of the draft or the notes for this book that Eric wrote up on his website. But the final copy, which will have, obviously it'll be a full, complete book. We hope to be able to release that within about 2 months, maybe by the end of October or in the middle of November. And then, and you already have another book, which is basically.
I have the second volume is complete
for the Verse or Algebra.
Yeah.
And you're saying that that's basically not the super heavy math theory and everything.
All this is pure math theory.
Uh-huh.
But what it does is it applies it to the geometries in normal polyphase power systems that you encounter, like 3-phase and 4-phase, and those kind of things.
So it's showing people how to apply it.
Well, it's the first stage of showing people how to apply it. In other words, how does it relate mathematically? And then the third volume, which is underway right now, that actually applies it to real situations like an office building load or a generator with a ground fault, or real situations, light bulbs, resistors, transformers, and stuff like that. Actual calculation of real power systems.
Right.
And then there's another area that I still have to invent, which is converting from Y to delta coordinates, which has never been done.
Uh-huh.
And misunderstanding of these things is leading to a massive degradation in the power grid, which is going to have catastrophic results.
Uh-huh.
So I have to make a government presentation on that subject. So I try to make all these things where, one component serves as many purposes as possible, just because I'm the only person, and ultimately I'm supporting all this out of my Social Security.
Right.
Most of the money that comes in, is to pay for labor and materials and rent and consumptive things, and there is really no money for me.
Uh-huh.
And then I only am one person. I can only write so many books and do so many things.
Right.
So a major complication now is I do not have an AC laboratory.
Which needs 3-phase wired into the building, and that's.
Yeah, I don't have real 3-phase. I don't have power factor meters, and I don't have all the things I need, the switchboards and whatever, to do any type of power research. The Cosmic Induction Project that's moving forward, but that's pretty much John's doing most of the labor there.
Right.
But that's also part of the Telert project. So, because that's the means for transmitting and receiving like telegraph and teletype and digital signals, voice and what have you, in and out of the Earth for maritime communications.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to make everything all work as one package to cut the cost and the labor and the confusion. And like I say, I've been doing this stuff since I was 6 years old, and I just don't have that enthusiasm that I used to have anymore on it. That's another complication. That's what happens when you get old.
Right.
Particularly when the world's taking a dive around you.
Yeah, it's getting pretty shaky.
Yeah, the board's getting shaky.
So with the funding, I do want to mention that if you're listening to this, and if you do want to donate to the cause and to help further the work with Eric and EPD Labs, that the two simplest ways to support it is to donate through PayPal. That email address is info@epdlabs.org. That's info@epdlabs.org. So you can donate directly to PayPal, or you can send like checks or money orders to Eric at his Lone Pine address. And if you go to ericpdollard.com, you'll see all that information right on the website with the mailing address. It's basically Eric Dollard, General Delivery, Lone Pine, California. And what's the zip code? Is it 93545? Yeah, 93545. And that'll go straight to Eric, and that money will be used to, buy parts and do whatever else. So let's see. Now, I want to mention if you're listening to this, we have a scheduled live Q&A call with Eric that you can call up for free, get on the line and ask Eric questions. It's going to be specific to Eric's last presentation, which is Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson. This is dealing with the type of transmission system related to the seismic project and this Bolinas RCA station. This was like a ship-to-shore type communication technology used by the Navy. And the principle of extraluminal transmission is that it's not faster than the speed of light. There is no velocity, so it's essentially instantaneous. The moment something is transmitted, it's instantly at the other end without taking time to travel there. Is that correct?
To some extent, but it's not a velocity-based communication system. That's the best way to describe it. The relationship between time and space is no longer velocity.
Uh-huh.
So until we can actually, get these systems back up and running again that haven't existed since, the days of Tesla and Alexanderson, it's hard to do these, the tests and the determinations. But at Landers, I already determined that the signals on the underground receiving apparatus get there long before the ones on the overground receiving apparatus.
Uh-huh.
And then there is the Crystal Radio Initiative project that I started on the Energetic Forum, which is developed enough that other experimenters can try to determine these things if they can, possibly build a suitable ground system. That's the main complications.
Right.
Ground systems rather costly and extensive.
And that Crystal Radio Initiative, that's actually what John Polakowski used to be able to design his coils for the cosmic induction generator.
Yeah, that gives the standard formulas for making Tesla transformers, something that's never been done before.
Right. And so that's all free right there in Energetic Forum. So if you're interested in that, you can go to energeticforum.com, look for the Renewable Energy Forum, and in there's the official Eric Dollard Forum. And you can search for the Crystal Radio Initiative, but it's all in there for free. You can go download it, read those papers, and it has everything you need to replicate those type of...
Yeah, I also covered that at the presentation. So basically, the aim of the presentation was to give an example with, some kind of diagrams and formulas for every type of possible transmission configuration, from a normal three-phase transmission line to Alexanderson system to Tesla system. All the various types of transmission systems were covered, both conventional and non-conventional, mainly to show how they all relate to each other and to come up with an idea of a generalized geometry and math and what have you for electric transmission that covers everything, kind of the unified theory.
Right. So do you want to briefly mention, in regards to the presentation at the recent conference, how you kind of put Einstein's relativity into perspective and how it's...
Well, nobody's ever bothered to talk about where all these ideas came from or what they mean and how they manifested themselves in the early experiments and in the dimensions of electrical quantities and what have you. So it was important to show how this peculiar way that the velocity of light exists in the electrical math, where that originated and ways to get around that.
Right. And you also go into the origins of where the whole concept of the quantum ideas came from?
I tried to, but I was limited in time on that.
Okay. So if you want to get onto this live call on September 27th, Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific time zone, make sure to get a copy of that presentation, Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson. Just go to ericpdollar.com and you'll see a link to it. That's where you can, I believe in the menu bar, there's a link to books and videos, I believe, and click on the Extraluminal one because only the people who purchased that presentation will be invited to this call. Because if somebody doesn't have that presentation, there's no point for them to get onto the call because they're not even going to have the frame of reference for what's even going on. So that's kind of the purpose of that call. So, and again, if you get that presentation through ericpdollar.com, 70% of that purchase will go to Eric and EPD Labs. Let's see. So
now, a certain amount of the introductory material for this also exists in the Lone Pines Writing 2.
Part 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's something there called the Camp David antenna that deals very extensively with the subject, and in the end, there's something that ham radio people can actually build that works.
Right. So that Camp David antenna, those writings were posted in Energetic Forum. They're all in there for free. You can go look them up if you want. And if you want to support Eric, you can purchase a copy of Lone Pine Writings Part 2. Just go to ericpdollar.com, click on the menu link for books and videos, and you will see the Lone Pine Writings link. And on that page for Lone Pine Writings, there's both Part 1 and Part 2. So you can either take the time to go search it out on Energetic Forum, or if you want it all nicely compiled in one book, because I believe Lone Pine Writings Part 2 is like a compilation of like five papers.
Well, yeah, there's quite a few. The Lone Pines Writing Part 1 was basically to establish a terminology.
Right.
So it actually started off as a discussion in the library there in Lone Pine one morning between several people, and I was trying to give a clear conception to these people who are interested in the subject of electricity, of how it worked without all the confusion, and then it escalated from there.
Right.
And then Part 2 was starting to apply, once the principles were established and it was understood, what volts and amps and all those things really meant.
Right.
Then was to apply it to realities. So that's when I came up with probably some of my most significant papers, such as the theory of electromagnetic, the law of electromagnetic induction was one, the Camp David antenna was one, the music versor subject was one. There's quite
relativity.
The theory of I covered some stuff about, actually I did. I extensively wrote about the theory of relativity too. That was something that started off in the coffee shop there one morning.
Right.
A friend of mine brought in a book by Einstein and threw it down on the table in front of me and says, maybe you can explain this to me. So that turned into a whole other writing.
Right. Okay.
So there's a lot of important papers in there.
Right. So yeah, if you're listening to this Lone Pine Writings, it's called that because Eric basically wrote these on a clipboard in the front of his car, sitting out in the desert in Lone Pine, California. And that's, and from the beginning, all those papers, either David Webster or John Polakowski helped to transcribe those and basically posted them in energetic form for you. And so if you're listening to this, all the papers throughout Lone Pine Writings have always been freely available right there in energetic form for the beginning, and they've been there for a few years already. And so you're free to go search those out. And again, if you do want them in a nice compiled format in a book, either part 1 or part 2, you can purchase those through ericpdollard.com. Just go click on the book video link, click on Lone Pine Writings, and you're able to purchase either part 1 or part 2, or for a discount, you can get the combo pack with both books together. And so now you're already thinking about what to talk about in the next conference.
Yeah, I got to start, at the beginning of the year, I'm going to have to start warming up for that because these things take a long time to put together.
Right. So what are some of the potential, I mean, music isn't really related to the conference topic, but it does seem to have quite a bit of interest. That one interview you did with Supernatural Power of Music, I believe.
The Power of Music.
Or the Power of Music.
Yeah.
And, so that is still a possibility because it's very really the Bursar algebra, right?
Yes.
And so, that's one possibility. If you're listening to this and if you have ideas of what you would like Eric to talk about at the next conference, go to Energetic Forum and just post some suggestions in Eric Dollard's thread. Maybe you can get some conversation going on about those. I'll probably do do a little poll at some point. Or if you happen to be in Facebook and you can see Eric's Facebook page, go in there and you can post some things in there. I would say it's better to post them either on Facebook or Energetic Forum rather than emailing them. That way other people can see them and they can chime in on their opinion of it.
Well, that's what I'm really trying to encourage is, because I don't see any of this stuff. I have to make that kind of clear to the public. I have no computer or whatever. My television is the front window of my car.
Right. Right.
So I'm trying to encourage, interaction and people to develop this stuff, to discuss it and argue and whatever. And that has happened sporadically in the energetic forum, but it's all kind of died out, unfortunately. But I'm trying to figure out a way to keep that alive.
Right. Yeah, and it's hard for you to see what's going on. Except for maybe when you're with me or something and I have computer access or Justin has his laptop or something like that. But other than that, if you're listening to this, Eric is not able to just, be there at his lab and log in and start, surfing the internet. That's just not happening. And so, but if you are listening to this, definitely go into Energetic Forum and just introduce yourself and, let us know that you're following his material and you've read his books and stuff, and just get some conversation going.
There's people involved in the energetic forum also that can answer basic questions on the subject.
Sure. Yeah. There's Sputins, D.R. Green, John Polakowski goes in there. So there's a handful of people who not only have a pretty good understanding of this stuff, but they actually post their experiments because they're actually building stuff based on all the equations and different diagrams and stuff like that you've put out over the years. And so, it's not just theoretical. They're actually building things that work.
Yeah, and I put out, virtually a whole experimenter's handbook on all kinds of things to build that are Tesla-related. Right.
Yeah, there's just and in the Energetic Forum, there's actually three different Eric Dollard threads. There's all basically part 1, part 2, and I would say right now the open one is part 3. Part 1 and part 2 got closed, and the primary reason I closed that as administrator was basically to preserve it, because some people would start posting stuff in there, then they'd start deleting it. So just to be able to preserve it, I closed it just so everything is safe and secure in there. And links to all three different sections within that forum just go to ericpdollar.com and you're going to see the menu bar. I mean, there's a whole ton of links in there that you can go through and just see all kinds of stuff that Eric's been posting over the years. I mean, it's an entire compendium of, years and years worth of, work, and it's all, all freely available there in energetic form. So definitely would encourage you to, go look through there and definitely post in Eric's, the most recent thread that's open and the discussions and stuff are in there. Go in there and just post stuff, if you have any questions. And like Eric said, there's other people who can answer some of the questions too.
Well, also, people that write me letters, if their letters are not too far out there past Pluto, right. I always give a response. I'll take the time to explain stuff to people.
Right. And so that's, if you want to write Eric a letter and correspond with him that way, just send it to his Lone Pine address, which we already gave a little bit earlier on this call. But you can also go to ericpdollar.com and you're going to see the Lone Pine address. That's the one where you can write directly to him because he goes to Lone Pine pretty frequent and checks his mail and stuff, and so you will get a response.
Yeah, the post office in Lone Pine has to be supportive of feral people because there's a lot of feral people up in the Sierras and out there in Death Valley. So it's rather amazing that there's actually still wild people left in the world.
Right.
And I'm one of them.
Right.
And I do bite.
Right. So let's see. Is there anything else that you want to cover? We're getting close to probably about 45 minutes or so on this call. Any requests you want to put out there, Eric, or anything else?
Well, I think we pretty much gave the whole rundown.
Okay.
So I do want to point out, that the book and video sales are essential because I've got this horrible overhead here paying for this building, and I can't do it out of my fixed income.
Right. So so basically any of Eric's books, book and video packages, which you'll see the links in ericpdollar.com on the book video link. Anytime anybody purchases any of that, 70% of that sale will go to Eric and EPD Labs. And if you follow the links through to any of the other presentations or books or anything that we publish through A&P Electronic Media, like any of Paul Babcock's work or him and Jim Murray's presentation from the last conference, if you go through one of Eric's links to his book and then you go to one of those other links, for anybody else's products, books or videos, Eric will actually earn 60% of that. So 60% of the sales for anything that's not Eric's, 60% of that will actually go to Eric and EPD Labs, just to let you know. And so, and also besides that, again, any donations that you'd like to help support Eric and EPD Labs, you can send that to the PayPal email info@epdlabs.org, or if you go to ericpdollar.com, there is a PayPal button there in the column. You can click on that, and that'll go directly into Eric's PayPal account, and or you can mail checks or money orders directly to Eric at the Lone Pine address. So I guess that's pretty much kind of covers most of the stuff we wanted to catch up on. And if there's if anybody has any questions, rather than mailing us at info@epdlabs.org, just post it in Energetic Forum or Facebook. That way other people can see it. And they can chime in on it. Either they'll know the answer, and if not, we can ask Eric. So I guess with that, we can probably pretty much wrap it up.
Yep.
Okay. Well, appreciate your time, Eric.
Okay.
We'll be in touch, and I'll get this on YouTube right away and all this out to your list. And if you go to ericpdollar.com, you can sign up for Eric's list. So anytime there's any updates like this or any kind of announcements or whatever new is happening, it'll usually go out to that list first. So definitely subscribe to that list. You'll see the sign-up form at the top right corner of Eric's website. Name, email, go get the confirmation email, click the link, and then you'll be one of the first to know. So I guess we'll call it good.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Eric. I'll be in touch.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Okay,
Bye.
Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey, this is Aaron Murakami, and this is Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. And this morning I have Eric Dollard on the call. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So it's been a little while since we've done some updates, and after the conference, right after the last video we did, we managed to have Steve Hills up here, who's the director of EPD Labs, and he took a bunch of Glom down with him from Mark McKay's and some other stuff, and we found that radar indicator, which we'll have to get down to the lab at some point. And so, but since then, you've been kind of out in the woods, out in Oregon, camping out and just kind of writing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, the presentation kind of really left me wiped out.
Uh-huh.
And then, so I came back here, and then I continued on the symmetrical component.
And as a bonus thrown in there, there's a copy of a video, kind of a guided tour by Eric, walking you through the Landers facility when that was up and running. So that, what would you say that was the first time anybody has ever publicly seen anything about Landers? Yeah,
well, that video really wasn't made, for general release. But what the video shows is was the power company engineers had showed up because of the interference between their system and my system, and the complications, and the fact that they were also interested in what it was I was working on. The place was kind of a Disneyland for any kind of power company engineer, because of just acres and acres of poles and wires and insulators and all that type of stuff they're into. So it was a Disneyland adventure for them. And then my friend Chris from Bolinas, who about once every 3 months came down to help me keep the place cleaned up and do stuff, decided to video it.
Right. And so for anybody listening, the RCA book, this is all part of a package called Wireless Giant of the Pacific, which is at wirelessgiantofthepacific.com. But you can find links to all this on ericpdollard.com, and if you go there and click on any of the book or video packages, then that earns 70% for Eric and EPD Labs to help support their work. Now so the presentation at the recent conference, Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson, that's what you're referring to as, with the most recent presentation. And that was a 4-hour presentation, and there's a link to that on ericpdollard.com. And if you're listening to this and if you haven't seen that presentation yet, definitely go to ericpdollard.com and click on the graphic or the link to the Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson. It's a 4-hour presentation. It includes the PowerPoint.
Because he was making his own personal documentary. This is all considered, this part of the old Bolinas RCA project.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, all my friends in Bolinas, they were children at the time, which I was involved at RCA, but I allowed them in, and they got to tune transmitters and do things like that. So we had kind of a long-going relationship until eventually everything in Bolinas was scattered and destroyed, and pretty much no hope of ever recovering any of the RCA effort.
Uh-huh.
Which is unfortunate. So right now, everything is redirected towards the Bell telephone approach, which there seems to be more survivors of Bell telephone and more interest, strictly on a governmental level.
Right. So there's a lot of hundreds and hundreds of photos that we put up right before the conference at the end of June on. I think there's a category called Long Lines Project, and there's a whole...
Yeah, that's basically what we're working on now, is taking the inverser algebra project, and then the noise and the pollution and everything else, I just had to bail for the forest and drop the whole thing. And then when I was there, then I started getting back on to this book that needs to be put together for the last presentation, which is going to be an absolutely monumental effort. It's going to take about 2,000 pages of writing.
Right. Well, your presentation was 4 hours, and you didn't even get to cover everything that you wanted.
No, it was just kind of what I did is I just gave the highlights of all the different subjects, mostly pictorial, just so, the viewer was, or the audience, was aware of the subjects, but each subject could be a book in itself.
Right.
So there's been kind of been a demand for me, because over the decades I've produced so many diagrams and equations and theories and stuff without really a lot of explanation. There's kind of a need for me, particularly with the stuff in the RCA book, is to get into some rather detailed explanations of what's going on.